Ready?
Ready.
Hello and no.
That was a silly hello. I like that guy.
I'm not happy with it. Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Funbearable. This is a bonus episode. I'm here. I'm Ray Harrington, as well as
Chuck Staten
And Brad Rohr.
And we're doing this audio only. There's no video component to this episode.
Yes.
But my fellow boys, my fellow fun boys, I have to say, when this drops, it is November 5th, which is also another day.
Remember the 5th of November, right?
Right.
Oh, no. It's not Guy Fawkes Day. No.
Oh, what day is that?
Then why are we wearing these masks?
I just didn't want to look at your faces.
That'll do it. Fair enough.
I have a Guy Ritchie mask. It's really obscure.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Are you saying
No
that
one
because it's
recognizes
just the guy? It was in Guy Fawkes?
Yes, Guy Fawkes.
Fawkes Day? Yeah. It's Michael J. Fawkes Day, actually.
I wish Guy Fawkes had a faux hawk. That'd be really confusing to describe.
Very confusing. No, November 5th is also sort of like a Back to the Future Day.
Yeah.
Because November 5th in the year 1955 is when Marty McFly appeared in Hill Valley in 1955 on the same day that one Dr. Emmett Brown invented time travel.
Yeah.
Very busy day.
Yeah.
It is.
Lot
It was
going
a
on.
busy day.
It was a very, very busy day. So this is a special little bonus that we figured it was a perfect time to drop this on November 5th. And it is an episode from my previous podcast, Ray Harrington Must Content. And on that podcast, a lot of interviews. Both of you were on it for fun things. And I also interviewed a lot of people that made things that I really like. And I'm sure some of those episodes will make their way to Funbearable at a point.
Right.
Yes.
But this episode is very special. It's extra special in my mind and my heart because this is an interview I did with Bob Gale, the writer and co-producer of Back to the Future, all three Back to the Future films.
I remember this because I don't know if you remember this, but you were like, man, like it's such a you love Back to the Future. I love Back to the Future. Brad loves Back to the Future.
I do.
And when you landed this interview, remember we were talking about like what you should ask him?
We were talking about different questions, different things to go over because the hard thing to do here is not nerd out too much. And get too into the weeds about the things because you guys do this stuff quite a bit with like the Comic-Con panels and things like that.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask these questions to people, but to do it in a personal setting on your own podcast, and also playing the line of like, well, I'm a stand-up comic and I want to be funny, but also I'm not going to ask this guy to take an hour out of his day so I can like poke jokes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And you also you're like, well, I don't want to ask the most basic questions that this guy's answered 1,000 times, but I also don't want to ask the weird, obscure stuff.
Right.
So I just want to know how many times Marty and Jennifer had made love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, see, if I had done this interview after we did our first batch of episodes of Funbearable, it would have been a different interview.
Yes.
I will say, me and Ray have a long-standing dispute about the rules of the Back to the Future universe, and
I
Ray
don't know.
refused
See, I wouldn't
to ask him about them.
I wouldn't say it's a dispute. I think you have the wrong idea of how time travel works in this world, and
I think that
you
that
insist
it
on it, even though I've explained the issue, and you're like,
I think
Bob
that
Gale.
Ray saying we don't have a dispute, you have the wrong idea is how he thinks about every argument.
No, I admit when it's a he said situation.
Well, this is. I mean, literally. I know that you think that you're right and I'm wrong, but we have a dispute about a thing that never clearly gets solved in the Back to the Future movies.
Sort of. It's a basic principle of the time travel, and I would argue that the issue is completely resolved when you look at other aspects of the films. But let's not do this, Chuck. let's not.
I know. I'm just
here.
saying. I think that would have been an interesting road to go down. You know what I mean?
For who?
for Chuck.
Who else? Who else would Chuck care about it being interesting for?
Yeah. But I will say, in the interview, I wanted to talk about some stuff and try and ask some questions that he hadn't heard, or focus on different aspects of this thing. And like one of the questions I was able to ask was something that I just spotted in the background, recently, and was able to ask that question, and he hadn't heard it before, which was delightful. And I got to run some of this stuff by Lee Leshin. We've mentioned before, friend of the pod, fan of the pod, personal close friend, and he's wonderful. And he produced the Back to the Future documentary, Back in Time.
Right.
And so he knew Bob Gale through that. That's how this whole thing happened. And, and he was very clear about, like, here are the questions he's heard a million times, and, and he has those answers ready to go.
For sure.
And I pointed out the thing that I had just recently caught, and he was like, oh, I have not heard that, and I did the documentary on this. So that was fun.
Right.
But to really focus on the writing, I think was really special, because that script, the Back to the Future script, and I say it in the interview, but that Back to the Future script is perfect. It's a perfect script in terms of plot, exposition, laying the pipe of everything, but not being boring, and having like a fun adventure. It's untouchable.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it, because to pull back the curtain, I'm a little tired. I just drove from New York to Rhode Island. I got in my house less than 5 minutes ago. Ray said, "Get your dick on the Zoom," and I said, "Yes, sir."
Yeah,
my dick's here.
Well, you took forever because you drove that moped.
Yeah, and I remember I said I'm gonna take every exit and just see where it takes me. So I've been driving for weeks.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. And you're like, oh, I'll record it on the moped. I'm like, no, the wind.
What about the wind and the bugs? My God, the bugs.
And your bumper sticker says ass, or ass, right?
No one rides for free.
Yeah, it's just all ass.
I crossed out grass. And I crossed out gas.
Yeah.
And I crossed out no one, and I put any ass rides for free. So it's ass or ass. Any ass rides for free. No, I was thinking about this on the drive home, and I was like, man, I'm like, Back to the Future, top 5 movies of all time for me.
Yeah.
And you guys also really enjoy it. And I'm like, I wonder what that formula is. It's the writing, obviously the performances are killer, but I was thinking about the formula of Back to the Future, because it kind of does exist within blockbuster culture. Like, you think of it alongside E.T., Star Wars, Jaws, all those big movies, Gremlins. There's something similar about all of them, Indiana Jones, but Back to the Future is not. It's not the most expensive movie of all time. It's not based on special effects for the whole thing. It's just a great story. It's just like every moment is the right next moment to go to keep an audience captivated.
Yeah, I think if you do break down the formula of Back to the Future, it is one of those perfect storm situations where you have a script that was, this was pitched quite a bit. This movie was kind of it was turned down a couple of places. It was pitched and repitched, and it was really just a concept at a certain point. And Spielberg kind of coming in and being like, "Hey, let's make this happen." And letting Robert Zemeckis, direct and work on the writing process with Bob Gale. The script, like the perfect storm, is you have a script that is one of the tightest scripts ever written. Really, I think that it comes down to, it's a textbook version of like, here's how you write a perfect 3-act structure for a story. So you have that part of the perfect storm. Then you have, your lead, Michael J. Fox, lightning in a bottle. Like, how do you I don't think you can compare Michael J. Fox, and I don't, and
Christopher Lloyd.
And Christopher Lloyd, another perfect casting situation. And the rest of the cast is super strong, comes in gangbusters. Like, there's no duds. You know what I mean? There's no duds.
No, for sure.
And you even get a weirdo.
Oh, yeah. With Crispin Glover?
Crispin Glover, yeah. You even get a weirdo that they try and, wrangle. There's some great stories about that. There's some great stories about that. I don't know. I can't remember if Bob got into those stories or not, but it might be apocryphal. But I did hear about a situation where in the backyard, when they're shooting the part where George McFly is putting laundry up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Marty McFly is trying to convince him, you gotta ask her out. You gotta ask her out.
Right.
And the clothes are getting hung up, and this shot was taking forever because Crispin Glover would not stand still. He was moving around too much and like leaving the camera line and everything. And Zemeckis is like, you gotta stand there. You gotta stand there. And Crispin Glover's just like, I think George would move around. I think he would be moving. That's what he was saying the whole time. Yeah. And Zemeckis finally like planted something on the ground. Like they put up like a little tiny fence around his feet. And they said, do not move from this spot.
Yeah, right.
It's incredible. But so you take that, then you have the soundtrack. The soundtrack is fantastic.
Yes.
The score, Alan Silvestri or Silvestri. How do
Joel Silver is his name.
No.
It's Hi-Ho Silver is his name.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's Alan Sylvester Stallone, right?
I'm reading. No, I'm reading it now. It's Saving Silverman.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. So it was Alan Slenderman?
Breaking Benjamin.
Breaking Benjamin. And his wife, Good Charlotte.
Yes.
She is good. You know what?
She is good. She's good. You know what? Every once in a while you catch her on the bad day and she's okay, Charlotte.
Yeah.
But no, that the score is perfect. I mean, just everything in that movie is just is pitch perfect. It's really great. And it is a magical thing, and I think there's a reason why it lives the way it does. And my biggest appreciation for that is the fact that franchise, Bob Gale really is kind of he's the holder of that torch. He's the bearer of the torch for Back to the Future. And the fact that him and Zemeckis have both said very, very plainly, as long as we're alive, there will never be a Back to the Future remake. We're never rebooting Back to the Future. We're never going to touch it. And that's an interesting part of Back to the Future too. It's not Back to the Future 2, sorry. Back to the Future as well.
Yes.
Is that it is a hugely popular franchise, and yet everyone agrees. The entire fandom agrees, and the people involved. Let's never touch this.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But just for fun, if they were going to reboot Back to the Future, who do you pick for this cast?
I hope your moped crashes. Just even flirting with this idea.
Because I have some solid ideas.
That
I think that you would be 100% behind.
I'll be honest with you. People have asked me about this in the past. I don't know if I could fill out the whole cast, but in terms of a Marty McFly, I think it's a little too late now. But if you had asked me this in earlier, say around when Community was airing, Donald Glover, I think, is a great Marty McFly. I think he can embody the little bit of nerdiness, the little bit of coolness, and that extra little side of just, I don't know, being a little bit smarter and funnier than everybody else.
Yeah.
I think he could pull it off.
That's pretty good. Brad, do you have anything?
Yeah, Doc Brown for me would be Michael Richards, little manic energy.
There you go.
Marty McFly, Jason Alexander.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
You aren't going to want to hear who plays George McFly.
Yeah. Lorraine is Elaine.
Yes. It's just... Biff will be played by Larry David.
Yeah. Biff is Newman. Hello, Biff.
I do have a real suggestion, though, that I think would be pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for Marty McFly, 2022, I say we go Miley Cyrus, gender bend, right?
Okay.
For Doc Brown, real surprise, but you're going to be shocked at how good he is. O.J. Simpson. Just
Okay.
an interesting person. You know, get some press on the movie.
Yeah, we definitely get some press.
Yeah.
You know, you need press.
Press. Now,
So-
would you put death threats under the heading of press?
So hold on. So Marty McFly, you know, being played by Martina McFly is played by Miley Cyrus. So instead of Lorraine, it's the you know, it would have to be a dad instead of a mom.
Oh no! Immediately, the whole thing falls apart.
Hold on, no, it's great. You know, it's great. Here's what it is. It's John Hamm plays Lorraine Baines, right? Wait a minute. John Hamm.
Car makeout scene gets very different, Chuck.
So
Yeah.
we get Hamm, Cyrus, OJ. We got Hamm and OJ,
Yep.
Cyrus, Biff. You're never going to believe it.
Is it
I
Billy Ray
haven't
Cyrus?
believed any of them so far.
Schwarzenegger comes back, but it's not him now. It's his de-aged hologram from the new Terminator movies. So he's like 80s Arnold Schwarzenegger as Biff. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that'd be an intimidating bully.
What do you guys think about this movie?
I hate it.
It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
it's really just garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to set it on fire.
Instead of Huey Lewis in the News, Post Malone.
And the
How else can I fuck this up? Let me
Post
think.
Malone and the
Yeah, that's right. He needs a backing band. Let me think about this.
How about this? Are you ready for this? Robert Downey Jr. as Doc Brown,
Yep.
Tom Holland as Marty McFly.
Okay, I'm on board.
Yep.
You get Mark Ruffalo as George.
Yes. Okay.
McFly.
Yep.
You get Scarlett Johansson as Lorraine.
Right,
This is a great cast.
Yeah,
This is getting hotter by the second.
it's getting more and more expensive too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I forgot to cast. I forgot to cast George McFly.
Hold on, I
Yes,
gotta
you
do
did.
Biff. I gotta do Biff.
think?
Okay.
In my
Who's your Biff?
in my Avengers. I mean, it's not Avengers. It's,
No.
Right. No.
Just off the top of my, I'm gonna say for Biff, probably Chris Evans is gonna be.
Yeah,
Biff.
that's good.
Yeah.
Chris
Going
Evans
against
or
type.
like maybe Tom Hiddleston. He could be a bad guy, I think.
Tom Hiddleston would be a great. He would be the guy that's in Biff's crew that later
Wears 3D
goes on
glasses.
to be in Titanic.
I love Brad's friends with that guy.
Yes. Billy Zane.
Close personal friends with Billy Zane.
He's friends with Billy Zane, and
Yeah.
Brad did a whole panel with him, and he came up with the idea of Billy Zane teaching acting classes at Comic-Cons, and Billy Zane loves it.
Yep. Comic-Con doesn't.
All right, so I have to finish out my cast.
Yeah, who's
So we
your
got
best?
Miley Cyrus. Well, Biff. I told you Biff was going to be young Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, that's right.
de-aged.
De-aged.
Who did
yeah.
So
George?
Miley Cyrus, John Hammond, George McFly.
Yep.
Billy Ray.
Let's
Cyrus.
see. Miley Cyrus is going to make out with John Hamm. So who is he married to that would really? We need like a nervous energy woman, right?
Okay.
Maria Bamford.
Okay, let's see. Nervous energy woman. What about?
Ooh, any woman that Chuck talks to in public.
I have an idea. Roseanne Barr.
No,
But
she's
she's
not
like,
nervous.
have nervous energy. Are you out of
instead
your
of
fucking
nervous,
mind?
she's like this. She goes like this. How about that? You know what I'm talking about? When she does that?
A child playing with a car toy, or a toy Velociraptor.
Let's see. So who else is there in the movie?
Nobody.
Biff's
That's
crew.
it. There's nobody else in the
Biff's
in the
crew.
movie.
So
Chuck.
Schwarzenegger's crew is made up of Jean-Claude Van Damme,
Yep.
Sylvester Stallone,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
Bruce Willis.
Who's,
And Bruce
who
Willis
plays-
has the 3D glasses.
Who plays Goldie Wilson?
Goldie Wilson. Mayor Goldie Wilson.
Yep.
Here.
Oh, you know what'd be interesting? As like a little in-joke, Goldie Hawn.
Oh,
Is that her name?
yeah. That would be
Okay.
interesting.
Sure.
Because that way, then no one would, the cast won't forget what her name is. 'Cause
What if
that's
it's
a big
Owen
problem
Wilson?
on movie sets? Owen Wilson. Oh, but what if it's Goldie Hawn and Owen Wilson, and they
mayor.
wink all the time, and
Yeah.
they're running as co-mayors?
I think I'm going to be mayor.
Mayor.
Wow, Mayor,
Principal Strickland.
You'll see one day.
You're never going to believe this.
Oh,
Principal Strickland. Ready?
Yeah.
It's Madonna, but she has this makeup, so it just looks exactly like the original Principal Strickland. Like no one would even know it's Madonna.
How about this? Let's put Principal Belding in as as Principal Strickland.
Perfect.
So he can walk in and go, hey, what is going on here?
And so my doc, O.J. Simpson, instead of a dog, he has a gerbil, right? And the gerbil goes everywhere. It has one of those crazy balls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
and
from G-Force.
Yes, exactly. And he sends it back in time in the beginning. Oh, also, instead of a DeLorean, it's an ice cream truck. And it's loud.
This is
it's
exactly
loud.
why I am so glad that Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis have a little something called integrity. And they're like, we're not going to do this. Because as you continue going as a joke, all I hear is executives at like Warner Brothers or at Disney being like, what else?
And also, just because we want to be safer in 2022, instead of hitting 88, what if they just have to hit 8?
Yeah.
Just a little bit. So there's not so much terror and you're not so nervous and kids won't try to replicate it and go back in time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. But no, this getting off of this horrifying idea of remaking Back to the Future, I will say, for me personally, this was a really wonderful interview to do. Like I would have created a fake podcast just to create the situation where I could talk to Bob Gale about writing the script of Back to the Future.
Sure.
Yeah. It's incredible to be able to talk to the guy that wrote this movie, not only a movie that I love and from childhood was my favorite movie, I still count it as my favorite as an adult, but then also to look at it as an adult and as somebody who writes different things, to be able to be like, this is an impeccable script, and to be able to get into that was really, really wonderful. And you know, I'm a Back to the Future guy. Like, I really love Back to the Future. Right. That was going to be my question before we wrap up and go to the interview. My question to both of you is, like, what level of fandom do you have for Back to the Future?
I'll let Brad go first.
Yeah, I would say high, but not insane. Like an 8 out of 10, maybe.
Okay.
You know, I read the what's it called? We Don't Need Roads. Is that the name of the book?
The biography, yeah.
Yeah, I read
what
that.
Do you say? You think it's in your top 5?
Probably, yeah. I've watched it repeatedly. Even you know, oh, it's on DVD. Oh, now it's on Blu-ray. Oh, you know, Chuck and I watched the special features on the Blu-rays.
Great. Yeah,
and you know, I do consider it an incredibly well-written movie, and yeah, I really enjoy. You know, it's. I think I made a reference to it in the Halloween episode. I think at some point we talked about the Old West, and I started doing, you know, Breaking Benjamin's theme. It, yeah, it's. I consider it a classic film, and it's weird because for me it's so hard to be like, yeah, well, this is why I consider it like, oh, it's my favorite. You know, I don't have any like merch from Back to the Future, but I know that Chuck loves the movie. So one of the things I do every holiday season is I'll go on eBay and I will search BTTF space rare, and I will look for like unique and interesting Back to the Future merch to get for Chuck. Because I know that he loves the movie. So it's it's a movie I thoroughly enjoy, and I love it.
Yeah.
One of my faves.
I'd say for me, it's top 5 for sure. And I'd say I'm a pretty kooky fan. Like, I'm not going to dress up as like Marty McFly Jr. And go to Comic-Con, but I do love it, and I do think I'm kind of like, it's one of those movies that like I could watch at any point in time. I think about it a lot. It comes up in my life. I buy shoes to look like Marty McFly.
Yep.
I think Marty McFly is like who we all want to be deep inside, right? He's the coolest guy in town.
Yeah, he's one of the McFlys that is who I want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, I thought of this. I take back my DeLorean is the ice cream truck. It's a white Ford Bronco.
Yeah, it has to be at this point.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think that they'd sue us if it wasn't. But yeah, so
I think Kato should be the dog. Kato Kalin with no lines should be the dog.
Yeah.
They put the stopwatch around his neck and they're like, come on, get in, Kato, get in.
For me, I'd say I'm a pretty
fun.
crazy. I'm a pretty crazy Back to the Future fan.
Yeah. For me, I think it's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite movies. And what is that?
I don't know. Oh, fuck! My watch thought I said like, "Hey, Siri,
tell it
do
to
a
shut
thing."
up.
I did. Stop it.
But no, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm a big Back to the Future fan. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But then when I start cataloging examples of my fandom, that's when I'm like, I'm a pretty big fan of this movie.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I have the hoverboard. I got the limited edition hoverboard. I have the DeLorean Lego set. I have various accoutrements that come with being a fan. You know, you guys got me the Biff's Hotel keychain. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You have the match made in space tattoo.
Yeah. That's on my back.
Here. By the way, the finale of my Back to the Future with Miley Cyrus and O.J. Simpson.
This is exhausting.
Is that it's actually on a ski slope, and O.J. ends up using
race.
2 hoverboards like skis.
Whoa.
It's pretty cool.
Whoa.
Yeah, you didn't think about that.
Okay, there were no hoverboards in the first one, so.
And I have that, and then I worked with Biff, which was nice. Tom Wilson.
Yep.
And he was a very kind man, and it was a good time. And I was able to get him on my documentary "Be a Man," which was special because I also ended up in the DeLorean in the documentary, and I got to meet some really big fans of the movie. And so I rode in a replica of the DeLorean, but I also got to sit in one of the actual screen used Back to the Future DeLoreans. And that was insane to be sitting in this tiny, tiny little seat and being like, oh yeah, Michael J. Fox had his little tushy right here. He had his little tush right here.
Wow.
But yeah, that was
a hot
really, really
tush back
special.
then.
Yeah. Oh my God, that tush was in high demand.
Yeah.
And so that was wonderful. And I have these little Back to the Future things. And then like my wife and I drove cross country for our honeymoon. And when we got to the West Coast, I also went to the parking lot of the mall that's at the beginning of Back to the Future. I ended up there and we were driving around. I'm like, it's supposed to be around here somewhere. And we got to a certain spot and I was just like, this is it. This is the spot. And I pulled our rental car into a spot. I'm like, I think it was right here. And I got out and I was looking around and I took some pictures. And then when we got home, I popped in a DVD and I paused it right there. And we had stopped in the exact spot, which was really cool.
Wow.
That
is very cool. I love it.
Quick interjection. Chuck, who's gonna play the Libyans in your film?
Oh, well, it's 2022, so it's Trump supporters.
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna catch hell for that too, though.
Yeah.
And it's also very lazy and easy. You know what I mean? So I would roll my eyes at that.
They also save the day at the ski slope.
Oh no, you made them the hero.
They're the heroes. Yeah. Well, at the beginning, it's everything about this is for the Back to the Future hardcore fans.
Yeah.
That's why we're bringing in the hoverboard movie 1 to trick you. We're using 2 at a time. That's a surprise. And then the Libyans, aka the Trump supporters, they come in at the end and they save the day as well.
See, you're giving so many examples of like
maybe by accident.
the things that make me cynical about large studios. The fact that you're like more hoverboards, like that's because that is genuinely a thing that would happen. Hey, you know what? People really like the hoverboard.
Star Wars.
So
they're
let's
like
have
double-ended lightsaber.
Yeah,
is the
so
same
let's
thing.
have a scene where there's 80 fucking hoverboards going on. There's going to be a fight sequence on hoverboards. They're above the ground. They're going over the Grand Canyon or some shit. It's just impossible. There's going to be a scene at the end where it looks like they're defeated and they're like, no, we're not defeated. And then all of a sudden, all these different timeline Doc and Marty's show up in the DeLoreans, just like the end of Endgame, where everybody comes back.
Right.
It's gonna be. It's just gonna be a million Doc and Marty's, and then they're finally gonna. I don't like kill Biff or something. I don't know, but
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean,
Great
I gotta
Scott.
say, real idea. What if there was a scene where, like, you know, the DeLorean couldn't fly, they couldn't get it going, and then they figured it out, and you didn't know what their solution was, and it was a hoverboard under every wheel well? That would be cool.
I hate everything about it. I really do. Although it would be funny if we mashed those up, the Endgame and Back to the Future world, where Biff gets the gauntlet.
Yeah,
And
see?
he's getting the stones.
Yes.
And Robert Downey Jr. sends a message to Marty McFly. He's like, hey, in your universe, in your universe, this is what's happening. You cannot let Biff get all of the stones. You cannot let him do it. And Marty McFly's like, he's got these gems, and if he gets the gems, everything's ruined.
You know what Biff would say to the Hulk when he punches him?
Oh, when did you become such a physical type?
So when did you become the physical type?
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Come on, you never wanted to see Marty McFly do the snap?
I did not. No, I didn't consider
That
it as a
would be
possibility
cool.
until
It
this
would be
conversation.
pretty cool to see him do the snap and have him go, so there's one thing you forgot, Biff. I am Marty McFly. He just does this.
But there's...
I just want to see, now I just want to hear Thanos saying Biff lines.
Right.
I just want to say, I hear him say, like, why don't you make like a tree and get the hell out of here?
If I was in this movie as, you know, he's Chuck, he's the director, and somehow I enter it, like I break the fourth wall,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
get the gauntlet, I would snap my finger and every character would have a hoverboard.
See, this is a perfect encapsulation of Chuck's mind. We're talking about this. We get it dragged over to Endgame where he's comfortable and he feels good. And then his next idea is like, and what if also I was the director, but then I was on screen and then I get the gauntlet? Like in 3 sentences, he's made himself the star of the fucking movie. In 3 sentences.
It's a cameo. It's a cameo.
Oh, speaking of Chuck, did you want to announce that you're on Cameo now?
I wish. It'd be fun.
And didn't you say you're only sending feet pics?
Yes, that's right.
So, well, this is double special. So we've got an interview with Bob Gale, writer and co-producer of Back to the Future, and also the announcement that Chuck Staten is doing feet pics on Cameo.
Yes.
You tried to do OnlyFans, but they canceled your account after they saw the
Well,
feet
it's actually
pics.
it's not Cameo. It's similar, and it's just called Cankles. That's all it is. And so I'm their first client, and I'm just really hoping this goes well.
And their best customer.
That's right.
I hope it goes well because I have sunk my life savings into it. So
Yeah, you did invest early, which is,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
would say you're a good friend.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I would say I'm a good friend for me being willing to be honest and say this is a bad idea.
Oh, all right. Well,
Right.
I'm a good friend. I'm a bad investor.
There you go. That's perfect.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I think that's gonna wrap us up here for the intro. I think we should just get to the Bob Gale interview now that we're talking about Chuck's feet on a pay-to-play subscription program. I think we should transition to the actual interview. But I really did enjoy this. This was one of those little special moment kind of things for me, and I'm happy to share it with Funbearable, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. And please, listener, don't judge me for really letting my inner geek. I couldn't keep it in. I couldn't keep in the fanboy, and it eked out a little bit here and there.
That's okay.
Hell yeah.
So, well, without further ado, here's the interview. Bob Gale, the Bob Gale on the podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm going to try and be cool because the last thing I need is for you to think I'm not cool. You know.
Most people think they're cool and they're really not. So don't worry about that. I have that problem myself sometimes. People treat me like I'm cool. I say, if you only knew me when I was in 5th grade.
Yeah. Oh, nobody's cool in 5th grade. Even the cool 5th grader isn't cool.
That's right.
They're usually unbearable.
Exactly.
Well, it's so interesting to have you on now, because I have a 7-year-old, and I was holding off on letting him watch Back to the Future for so long. It's my favorite movie, and I really wanted him to be old enough to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thankfully he's
now he is, right?
Yeah, he's pretty film literate, and I appreciate that about him. And so we sat down and watched it. And, as a kid, I watched it and I instantly became fascinated with time travel and just adored the movie. And as I got older and I got into film and film writing and all of it, I realized this is one of the most tightly written scripts ever. I mean, it's just such a tightly written movie. It could be the one film to teach in film school about the structure of a 3-act movie.
They do use it. And what's nice about our technique is that we try to make a lot of this stuff invisible. And that's what you end up appreciating. You say, oh my God, that was the setup for Uncle Jailbird Joey. I never saw that coming, right?
Yeah.
And, Twin Pines Mall is now Lone Pines Mall. And that's just really subtle in there. And, a lot of people don't ever see that until the second or third time they see the show.
Right. Yeah. So, there's so many little details like that. But not only that, it's the exposition scenes as well. Like, I was watching this with my 7-year-old, and so I was watching it with a different perspective this time, seeing how much of this pretty heady concept of time travel, he really absorbed. And those exposition moments, those key moments, the way you've written those, you're giving the audience not only the beats of the characters and the plot and what needs to happen for everybody, but you're also explaining time travel to the audience. And it never feels like exposition. It never feels like an exposition dump. It just feels like natural. I mean, obviously with Doc and Marty, that relationship must have helped, where you have this.
Sure. This is a kind of a classic dramatic trope, if you will, or device. Actually, is better word. To get exposition out, to bring somebody new into a situation and have to have explained. So one of my most favorite uses of that, 2 of them actually. One of them is the original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. It starts off and you see this young guy and he's preparing for his test to be a motorman. And this guy's drilling him and he's just rattling this thing off. A regular subway car is 90 feet long and 20 feet wide. And the motorman switches this and they're just rattling this off. But you're getting exposition, but you're understanding this is a good way to present it because I don't know this stuff. And this guy's practicing. And if you remember the movie 9 to 5, and this device used all the time, where Dolly Parton is the new person who comes to work. So the other girls have to explain, okay, this is the boss. This is where you go to get coffee. This is what goes on here. Never go into that room. All that stuff. And it's natural because they're explaining it to somebody who doesn't know.
Right.
And what you never want to do as a writer is to have the characters talk about stuff that they both already know. It's boring, and you just say, well, that people would never talk like that.
Very true. Very true. And it's interesting because you're a person in the film that is kind of representative of the audience.
It's Marty.
Yeah,
right.
It's Marty.
You got that in The Godfather, too. The great scene when, Kay, they're at the wedding, and Kay says to Michael, who's that scary guy over there? That's Luca Brasi. He helps my father sometimes. And he just, she's the audience, and everybody's saying, oh, okay, all right. And then you're set up for all this stuff later.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So to get into the nuts and bolts of the process of writing Back to the Future, the process must have been a little different than kind of the average script being written, because you worked on this with Robert Zemeckis, who was also the director. And I feel like that shorthand of writing with the director involved Does that allow you to kind of shortcut some of the descriptives, some of the language in the script?
Yes and no. I mean, writing with a partner, whether the partner is a director or not, is always very helpful because it helps you to do something called killing your darlings. It helps you not be self-indulgent, because if I fall in love with some moment or something, and Bob Zemeckis says, "Well, I don't get it, Bob. What's the idea here?" I said, "Well, I think this is a good way to do this." And he says, "Okay, well, I see what you're getting at, but wouldn't it be better if we did this?" So there's a give and take that you get. And at this point, Bob is wearing his writer's hat, because remember, when you start off writing a script, we didn't know what was going to be entailed in getting this thing off the ground. So you're writing for possibly the dumbest audience out there, studio executives. So you really have to make it clear and make it understandable to these folks what you're trying to get across. So having somebody to bounce things off really is helpful, whether they're the director, whether they're a producer, whether they're just your buddy. Probably not your mother. That's not a good choice. But yeah, that's because film is a collaborative. It's a collaborative medium, and with two people in the room, each of you are the other's audience, and it is an audience. It's an audience medium, so that's really important.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And you brought up a great point about being a collaborative process, because I mean, there's the old trope saying of a film is made 3 times: when it's written, when it's shot, and when it's edited.
Exactly.
And I guess that brings me to a very nerdy question. We know some of the bigger changes in the script, from the original script to the filming process.
Right.
The DeLorean was originally a refrigerator, the bomb testing site instead of the lightning strike.
Clock tower, right.
Yeah. So with those changes, how involved were you in those moments? You say kill your darlings. Was there something that you were really married to that you had to change?
No, a lot of times, I mean, I was involved with everything 100%, because remember, I'm also the producer of the movie too, right? So, and Bob and I trust each other implicitly with filmmaking. We both know where that our priorities are. Let's make the best possible film that we can. And so, were there things that we would have liked to done that we did that we cut out? Well, sure, you can see those in the deleted scenes. And when you put the movie together, as you say, it's the next stage of writing. We filmed this cigarette commercial that Lorraine's family watches while they're watching The Honeymooners. And it's hilarious. We have this surgeon coming out of the operating room, and he says, "After doing 3 lung operations in a row, I like to relax and light up with a Sir Randolph." And he pulls out his cigarette. And it's just great. But we put it in the movie and we watched it. It was like, okay, we're stopping the movie to watch this goofy cigarette commercial. And as funny and great as it was, we said, cut it. So those are the type of things where it sounds like a good idea and you try it out and you think it's going to be a good idea. And then you put it in and you realize, nope, not a good idea. And then the opposite, this is an interesting kind of observation. There is 1 2-minute sequence in the movie that really doesn't advance story and has very little to do with character. And that's the Johnny B. Good scene, because Marty's gotten his parents to kiss. The photograph is restored. He could just head off to the clock tower at that point, and nobody would know that there was anything else there.
Yeah.
And we thought about whether we should just cut that out. And our film editor said, "No, this is too great. You got to put this in front of an audience and see what they think of it. See how it plays."
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling the audience is just going to love this. They're going to be in a mood to just kind of take a breath and celebrate the fact that after all this insanity, Marty had succeeded. And of course he was right. But that's a slightly self-indulgent moment, if you will. But it turns out to be, one of the most iconic things in the movie.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I guess I always viewed it as kind of a like a victory moment, the celebratory moment.
Well, exactly, and that's what it turned out to be.
Yeah,
that's what it turned out to be. I mean, Marty is saying in the beginning, you know, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to play my music in front of anybody.
Right.
And so this is the payoff of that. Yes, he gets that chance, and he gets to do what he loves, and so forth. But again, if you didn't have it, the story would still work. But again, this is one of those things, and this happens in movies a lot, where you just say, "Wow, it's a great crowd pleasing moment," and you don't want to not have the movie without that in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's man. There's so many little detail moments that I think I'm realizing talking to you right now. I can't believe this movie that has our Marty McFly going back to 1955. You really did resist the temptation of the jokes of we know what happens, right? I think we see that a lot in anything that takes place, in a period piece kind of way. There often is a temptation to, pepper in some jokes about, what we know now, right? So like the cigarettes being harmful and the surgeon, pitching those cigarettes. It's fascinating that you guys went through this whole movie, and I don't think I think there's one joke maybe that kind of has that awareness.
Little throwaway things like, do you have a television set? Yeah, well, we have 2 of them. Wow, you must be rich, right? I mean, it's funny. It's a joke. It says something about the difference between the 50s and the 80s.
Yeah.
But what we were always looking for was to show the difference between the 50s and the 80s, plus the attitude that we thought about a lot when we got started was to say, yeah, as adults, we can look back on an earlier time and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool to time travel back there? But Marty ends up in the 50s purely by accident, and he doesn't want to be there, and he really doesn't like it. And that's, and that's not usual for a time travel movie. Usually in a time travel movie, the time traveler consciously decides, I'm going back or I'm going forward to this period in time. And Marty didn't want to have anything at all to do with this. So he's just saying, oh man, this is such a screwy place. I want to get the hell out of here. And so that's his attitude. And we filter the movie through, as you said, he's our guide. He's our guide to the 50s too. So he sees all this stuff and he's looking at these Texaco guys coming out there, and he's never seen anything like that at all. And the kid on the pogo stick, well, maybe he's seen that, but really? It's like,
yeah, I think I would be okay. I think I would be okay if I was dropped into 1955. The only thing I would struggle with every day is the inability to take my cell phone into the bathroom. That would be the thing I need.
Well, Woody Allen famously once said that as far as time travel was concerned, he would never visit any period that didn't have indoor plumbing.
That is a very good rule. I think that's a good self-rule for any time traveler. Now, when you were writing, you wrote the first movie as a singular entity, and then the request for a sequel comes in, right? And you wrote 2 and 3 together. Now, those little seeds that you were planting in the first movie, like the Lone Pine Mall, it was originally the Twin Pine Mall, and all that stuff. It definitely felt like 2 and 3 amped up more of those little seeds, those little fun things, because I think in 2, for the first time, we get to see a much more direct correlation between the actions and consequences of the time traveler, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, that's true. And part 2 really is more of a classic kind of time travel story, which is if you use time travel for your own personal gain, it's going to backfire on you. I mean, that's a very familiar time travel trope.
Right.
And part of the thing that made the first movie unique and unusual is that, as I say, Marty didn't want to be there. And he wasn't trying to straighten out his father for any other reason than so that he could just go home. He wasn't thinking about, is this going to make my father's life any better? No, it didn't ever occur to him. All he was trying to do was make sure that he was going to be born so that he could go home. So the fact that it turns out when he gets back that there's this sort of bonus from the consequences of his action, and it's a good thing, that's unusual in time travel. Because, you got Ray Bradbury's classic Sound of Thunder. People are going back in time to go on a dinosaur safari, and the guy steps on a butterfly, and the next thing we know, equivalent of the Nazis have won the election in the time period that he had left, and it's all because of the butterfly effect, which got its name from that story.
And those little seeds of action and consequence kind of come through in nice little details too. Just fun little seeds that are there. And what I love about that is every viewing, I will catch something new. Every time. I mean, I've seen these movies countless times, and every single time. I was watching it with my son last week. We were on part 2, and for the first time, I realized that all of the for sale signs on the street in 1985, the alternate 1985, they all, yeah, exactly, the Tannen real estate thing. And I was like, oh my God, I never noticed that before. And you must have had so much fun kind of planting those seeds in part 2 and in part 3.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. We sure did. Did you catch, are you aware that in the front of Biff's Casino, there's a sign that says smoking required?
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch smoking required. I love that. Now, you know what? I did catch something for the first time when I was watching it with my son, and I spoke with my producing partner, Lee Leshin, who you know as well.
I believe you're wrong.
Yeah, and I pointed this out to him, and he had never caught this before, and I had to send him screenshots to prove it. He didn't believe me at first, of course. But in alternate 85, we see Jennifer's dad's station wagon in the driveway, just tucked off in the corner. Yeah, and it's been in an accident.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I was like, wait a minute, hang on. And then we get to the end of part 3 where they drop Jennifer off again.
And it's fine. And the car's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, exactly. And I had never noticed that before, because there's never a shot in the movie that kind of calls attention to it. It's just subtly in the background.
Exactly. And that's the hallmark of our style, which is we don't want to hit anybody over the head with it. And as you say, the more you look at it, the more of these little details that you'll see. We said we need to put this in there because we're thinking about everything. The amount of time that it takes to shoot a scene, you're going to think about every single detail. And there's some that got by, but most of them, here's one of my favorites, is that if you, in the first movie, in the 1985 scene with Marty and Jennifer on the town square, you look at the clock and the ledge is perfect. When he comes back at the end of the movie,
oh my God,
the ledge is broken.
Oh, Bob, I honestly didn't catch it, and that level of detail makes me so happy. It's like you guys were able to see what this would become in terms of such an iconic series of films.
No, you know what? What it was our attitude about making a movie is we got to make a movie that we want to see. We have to make a movie for us because we have to assume that our taste is close enough to the general public that if we satisfy ourselves, we'll satisfy the audience. So we said, okay, we're making, William Friedkin famously once said, I make movies for the guys I went to high school with, right? So that was our attitude, was say, okay, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Well, nobody's going to see that. Well, so what? We'll see it. We'll know that it's there. Now, one of them that we missed, it's really hard to spot. When Marty writes the letter to Doc in the cafe, if you look very carefully at where the words are on the paper, in 1985, when Doc unfolds the letter, one of the words of or the or something is actually on the next line. So we never saw it. The editors never saw it. We get a letter from a kid from Japan, and he sends us screenshots and said, look at this. So all the time we were shooting Back to the Future 2, we would say, well, is anybody going to see that? Yeah, that kid from Japan.
Well, clearly, it all crumbles now. with of being on another line, I mean, it changes my entire viewing experience. Now I'm taken out entirely.
All right, well, sorry.
But I do have a question about the about Jennifer's dad's car, right? It made me realize, hey, we don't know what happened to Jennifer in alternate 85. We never find out where Jennifer is, what she's doing. Please don't tell me Jennifer's, she was killed in that car accident in the car.
You know what? We never really thought about that. It was just one of those things where we assumed that she was fine.
Yeah.
But whether she would have been having a relationship with Marty, probably not. She might be with some other guy. But there were certain things. There's a deleted scene in part 2 when old Biff comes back from 1955 to 2015. You see him stagger out of the DeLorean, and he just kind of falls down. And you think, okay, he's having a heart attack or something from the stress of time travel. The longer version of that showed being erased from existence because something that he did in 1955 shortened his life. Now, we previewed the movie with Biff being erased from existence, but an audience was completely confused because that's something that only works the second time you've seen the movie to know what Biff did. So we decided, okay, we'll just cut that out. We'll let the audience assume that he's having a stroke or a heart attack or something, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things where we were too far ahead of the audience, and that wasn't going to work.
I knew about the deleted scene, and it always did raise a question with me about the cane tip, the handle of the cane, still being in the DeLorean, knowing that he faded away. But cutting the scene of him fading gets rid of that question, really. That question
too, right. Yeah. And for anybody who is interested to know the alternate history of Biff, what happened to him when he got the almanac, we did a comic book series for IDW called Biff to the Future, which I believe is still available as a graphic novel. If you can't find it on Amazon, you can probably find it on eBay or one of the old comic book sites. It was a six-part series. It was collected into a graphic novel, and it starts with Biff getting the almanac, and it follows that entire alternate timeline and takes you through the history of Biff, how he got gambling legalized, his relationship with Richard Nixon, how he got Watergate stopped. I mean, it's really perverse and wonderful. It's one of my favorite things that we did in the comic book series. I co-wrote it, and if you're totally Back to the Future nerd and you don't know about that, check it out.
Yeah, I read that when it came out, and I can co-sign on that recommendation. It's a very fun little world to be back in, especially from the perspective of the villain, essentially, right? Although I would say, I guess maybe time itself is the villain in Back to the Future, because there's always that ticking clock, literally.
Exactly.
And my one super nerd moment, my question. And I wasn't even going to ask this question, and I'm already embarrassed to ask it.
Go ahead. Come on.
All right.
Suspense.
All right. So given all of the events in Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, right? And at the beginning of 2, the end of 1, Doc comes back. He says, we got to go back to the future. It's to do with your kids, and this series of events with the break-in and, Marty Jr. getting in trouble causes a timeline that, the entire McFly line is kind of ruined by this. But throughout 2 and 3, we get this kind of subplot of Marty needing to back down from people, right? Needing to not be goaded into something. Right. Yeah. Because he's going to get in a car accident and break his hand and owe a lot of money. Why didn't Doc say, "Hey, Marty, don't get in the car that day," because it's the next day it happens. And now I know the answer is because if that happened, the movie would be 10 minutes long. I know that, but it always struck me. Why didn't Doc give him a warning here, or was Doc being kind of all knowing in this moment? Kind of, I know things work out for you with this car accident.
Well, we never spent any time really thinking about that, because it's also possible that Doc didn't research that.
Gotcha.
He researched kids and saw, oh my God, this is a crisis. We've got to do something about this. And perhaps Doc was thinking maybe it's not a good idea to mess with time at this point. Maybe Doc was hoping that Marty would learn a lesson throughout the adventure of this and figure it out for himself, which of course is the better way to do it, because if somebody tells you not to do something, that doesn't necessarily change your character, right?
Right.
Marty had to learn that, losing his temper and reacting whenever anybody calls him a chicken is not a wise thing to do. And so if Doc says, don't get in that car or don't go there someday, that doesn't mean he's still not going to do something else that's just as crazy later on because somebody calls him a chicken.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? And I'm sorry that I brought it up.
No. If you brought it up, lots of other people do. One of the questions that comes up a lot is, well, how come George and Lorraine don't recognize their son as this guy that they met in the 50s? And, all you got to do is just really think about it a little bit. Marty was in 1955 for 7 or 8 days total.
Exactly.
And he only saw Lorraine and George, for 3 or 4 of those days. He didn't spend any time in the high school. They don't have a photograph of him. They remember this thing at the dance. Sure, they remember that. They remember probably there was this kid named Calvin Klein, and they probably get a big laugh out of the fact, oh, isn't that funny? There's a clothes designer shows up named Calvin Klein. But in terms of being able to recognize this guy in 1955 as their own kid, that doesn't even compute to you, especially if you're a parent and you think about that, or you just think back to somebody that was in your grade school for a week or a month or even a year. Can you remember them? Really?
Right.
You can't. Or if you saw some kid today who looked a little bit like them, what is your first response going to be? That guy must be a time traveler. No, that's not what you're going to say. No, you're just going to say, hey, what a coincidence. That guy has a physical resemblance to somebody I knew 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and we see in Back to the Future too, it's very easy to look like Marty McFly. All of his, both of his kids look exactly like him.
Right.
I think that brings me to the fandom in a fun way. It must be bizarre to have this piece of work that you've done picked over, however lovingly, for decades now, and have people that truly love this thing but still want to come to you and ask silly questions like, why didn't Doc tell Marty about the car accident?
Well, but these are good questions. They're not stupid questions. These are questions that come about because people have spent a lot of time thinking about that and wondering. Because look, one of the reasons I think that Back to the Future is so powerful and it still works today is because everybody asks the question, what if I did this instead of that? What if I went out with him instead of that guy over there? What if I did take that job instead of going to California? All those sort of things. People, you lay in bed and you think about, I wish I should have said that. I wish I said that. So Back to the Future allows you to see people's timelines if they made different decisions. And that's just a very powerful thing to think about because we always are thinking about that stuff. Of course, the other thing is, what did my parents do on their first date, right? Everybody thinks about that question. And that, I think, is at the core of Back to the Future, why it works, now 35, 36 years later, why it works in every country in the world, in every culture. It doesn't matter. It's a universal human thing. I was explaining to somebody else why is Romeo and Juliet the most well-known of Shakespeare's plays? Why do they keep remaking it? Because the core idea of Romeo and Juliet is my parents don't want me to hang out with that person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you boil it down to its simplest thought, that's what it is. And everybody says, yeah, my parents have told me not to go out with that person, or they don't want that kid hanging around my house. Whatever it is, right? Everybody can say, yeah, I get that. I get that. And so it doesn't matter that it's, 16th century Verona and people are talking in iambic pentameter. Doesn't matter. It's a core idea that's very powerful.
Although I will say now, being a grown-up and a parent, I would say I'd love to see a version of Romeo and Juliet from the perspective of the parents going, oh my God, these kids, they're 16 years old. They're so dramatic. So dramatic. Guys, settle down. Settle down. Just sleep on it for one night. Think about it for a minute. But I think, there's so many magic things about Back to the Future, but you bring up a fantastic point. Such a big concept with time travel brought down to a very small story point of a personal relationship with your family is something that I think everybody can understand. And, importantly for kids watching it, whether they were kids in the 80s or kids today, like my son, he can understand, there's time travel. It's this big idea, but we're not jumping all over the place. We're not going to, crazy times.
You don't have to know any history. You know, okay, if you don't know that Ronald Reagan was the president, that's a joke that you might not laugh at, but so what? Somebody was president. You don't know he was an actor or whatever. You don't know that there was a brand of soda called Tab or Pepsi Free. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It's the guts of it that matter.
Right. And every kid can understand, my parents were young, because that's all parents do. Parents constantly tell their kids, when I was a kid,
It's a shocking thing when you finally understand, oh my God, my dad was 8 years old and, he fell down and he skinned his knee. And somebody gave him a black eye. Really, these godlike people, they were screw ups just like me.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Here we are. We're talking about this movie 35, 36 years from when it was created. That level of an iconic film. Did you have any idea, script writing, you write scripts, sometimes they go, sometimes they don't, sometimes they get the green light.
We had no idea. Yeah. We had no idea. And to really indicate that we had no idea, remember we shot, 5.5 weeks of this movie with the wrong actor playing Marty McFly.
Sure.
And I think that had we not made that casting decision to replace Eric Stoltz with Michael J. Fox, you and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation today. Because, there's a reason why actors get the big bucks, movie stars get the big bucks, because the best ones have this ability to have people identify with them, to make people watch them. And that's a rare commodity that can work on a two-dimensional screen. So the fact that Bob and I had this experience of seeing 40 minutes of the movie cut together and it not working with the wrong actor. It, I think, is a real seminal part of our careers to just be able to say, okay, we actually got to experience this other timeline where somebody else was Marty McFly. And now we're going to do it again, and we're going to have a different timeline. And one timeline was going downhill, and the other one took us uphill. So I like to think that it gave us a certain amount of humility and a certain amount of respect, and to remind ourselves, hey, you could write the best script possible, but if you put the wrong people in it, it's not going to work. So film is a collaborative effort. Our musical in London, same thing. It's very collaborative. You have to have the right people involved. It's not just one thing. It's everything. Right.
And I heard that Eric Stoltz, he auditioned for the musical. Is that true? I think it's so fascinating.
Timeline.
Yeah, I do. It's so interesting, when someone's kind of becoming a Back to the Future fan, that moment of realizing, whoa, Eric Stoltz was, and there was 40 minutes. Is there ever going to be a time when we see a rough cut, like a full rough cut of that 40 minutes?
We've never destroyed the footage because we recognize that it is of historical significance. But as long as Eric Stoltz is alive, we're not going to put that out there, because every time we do something about that, everybody just kind of dumps on Eric.
Yeah,
that's not fair. And the internet can be really cruel. And we don't want to subject anybody to that. I mean, it's people can be really mean. And so it'll someday, if you live long enough, it may find its way to your to some screen somewhere. But in the meantime, our attitude is, hey, Eric Stoltz is a human being. He's still a working actor. He's a working director. There's no reason to do something that's going to make people pile on him. Look bad. And, we're not going to be those guys.
No, you make a great point there. And I think it's wonderful that you're so thoughtful about that, because it's a fun piece of trivia for us Back to the Future fans, and thinking, oh, wow, Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly, what a wacky thing. But to be Eric Stoltz, to be like, well, hang on, I was doing a performance, and it wasn't the right fit, and then he becomes not Michael J. Fox,
right. I hope he's not remembered just for that, right?
No, I think he's had some fantastic performances.
We only remember Pete best because he was replaced by Ringo, right?
That's fair. That is fair. With the legacy of Back to the Future, and especially now in current pop culture, remakes, reboots, everything is happening. So sequels, sure, we know that the sequel to Back to the Future, Part 4 would be the Telltale games, right? That's kind of the that's kind of the 4.
Yeah, that's kind of a Back to the Future Part 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and you wrote.
Then we have the comic books,
right?
If you read the whole 36 issues of the regular comic book series, it fills in a lot of holes and kind of does some of that.
Yeah.
But people say, well, what about a Back to the Future 4? And I always say, hey, we can't. You want to see Back to the Future without Michael J. Fox? And they say, well, no.
Right.
And then you say, okay, well, then you understand why there's no reason why we should be thinking about doing that. And do you want to see Back to the Future with somebody else being Marty McFly?
Never.
Probably not. Although maybe you could find somebody, but it's one of those things where you just kind of say, let's leave it alone.
Yeah.
We won't be the guys that just leave it alone, because the movies are really good. People really like them. And I have so many fans tell me that they are so respectful of the fact that we're not milking it. We don't want to do a spinoff. We don't want to do something else. And let's face it, we have seen all these movies where they go back to the well too many times.
Right.
And, it's up to you to make certain decisions about whether that was worthwhile or not. Did we want to see Indiana Jones being an 80-year-old guy? I kind of don't. Didn't work for me, but maybe some people did. So,
no, I'm absolutely with you. I'm definitely one of those fans that's like, no, please don't, because I really, really, really respect and appreciate the fact that you guys have that mentality of we already made it, it's here, and I also think it's one of the very few movies that people bring up this topic of a remake or a reboot or a sequel. It's one of the very few where there is actual physical proof that putting someone else in the role of Marty McFly doesn't work. We've seen it. We've seen it not work.
Let's not go all the way out there, because we have Back to the Future, the musical, now playing at the Adelphi Theatre in London.
Sure.
This was a decision that Bob and I made, that we felt, okay, people want to revisit the world of Back to the Future, but let's do it in a different medium. So we retell the story of the first movie as a musical. And the cast is fantastic. Ollie Dobson plays Marty McFly, and you're absolutely, totally comfortable with him as Marty McFly. Roger Bart as Doc Brown works great. He's fantastic. All the cast, they're terrific. They are doing things in the musical that couldn't have been done on the screen, but nobody has any problem buying the fact that these people are those characters because the material is powerful enough, and everybody goes to the theater knowing, okay, we are seeing a theatrical musical based on a movie we love. And we believe, and audiences are telling us, that we successfully captured the spirit of Back to the Future in this musical. And people come out of the musical and they're just delighted and happy and over the moon. Everybody who worked on the musical, whether they're on stage or backstage, they're all fans, and they all wanted to make this truly a spiritual retelling of the original. You know, as did I, as did our director John Rando, Al Silvestri and Glenn Ballard, who co-wrote the songs. So we had all this going for us, and so you'll go see that musical. People go see the musical, and they'll say, "Yeah, God, yes, I totally buy these characters."
Oh, sure. I think that the different medium helps a lot in that allowance, right? In that right. Ability.
But you know, look at Harry Potter. You know, after they replaced Dumbledore, when Richard Harris died, you didn't have any problem. You didn't have a problem with Michael Gabon being Dumbledore.
Sure,
it worked fine.
Sure,
you know. So, and everybody gets it. You know, we had to replace Jennifer because Claudia Wells was unable to do it.
Yeah. Are there times when you are tempted, especially with special effects having changed so much since then? And I mean, you guys were pioneering some of those effects. Is there ever a time where you're tempted to say, well, now the story that I would like to tell could be made? Go ahead.
Are there any time travel ideas that I have in my head?
Yeah.
Am I constantly playing around with them? Yeah. Are they Back to the Future? No. And they shouldn't be Back to the Future, because people say, well, I think you should do a Back to the Future movie where they do this. And I'll say, well, why don't you make it an original movie and write it yourself?
Yeah.
Because then people don't have any preconceived notions. You know, you go to a sequel to a movie that you love, you know, you set a really high bar, right? Oh, this better be as good as what I saw. And when people say to me they want to see a Back to the Future Part 4, I think what they're really saying is, I want to see a movie that makes me feel as good as I felt the first time I saw Back to the Future.
Yeah.
That's what they want. And so there's two ways you can have that experience. Go to London and see the musical, or keep your eye on your concerts in your city. And when Back to the Future in concert shows up, go see that.
Right.
Because that's where we have a live symphony orchestra playing the score as the movie is projected. And what you're going to get from these experiences is being in a full theater with hundreds, if not 1,000 or more people watching this story unfold.
Yeah.
And the audience experience is what you don't get when you watch it at home. And that audience communal experience is extremely powerful in a movie like Back to the Future. You know, now you watch another classic movie like, you know, off the top of my head, 12 Angry Men, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter whether you watch that on a big screen with an audience or not.
Sure. Yeah.
It was originally a play. Sidney Lumet adapted into a brilliant movie. You know, but on the waterfront, maybe if you saw that in the theater, yeah, with an audience, certainly The Godfather would. You go see a movie. I remember seeing Straw Dogs when it came out with an audience. And my God, the last 20 minutes of that, the audience is insane. It's just great. I mean, it's a rough movie, but it's great.
And there is a third option if you want to recapture that moment of seeing Back to the Future for the first time, and that's a head injury. You just get a good, solid head injury. And
Bob and I actually fantasized many times, you know, gee, would it be possible to go to a hypnotist and have them erase your experience of the first time you saw some great movie.
Yeah.
So then you go have that experience again.
And you know what? That brings me to one of my last questions, because you've been so patient and kind. If you could see Back to the Future as an audience member in some, like, disconnect yourself from the creative process of it. It's an odd question. It's a philosophical question, but really, like, what is the story of Back to the Future to you if you were an audience member?
Well, I think all these notes that we've been talking about, all these things that we're hitting. I remember the first time we sneak previewed the movie in San Jose. This was a totally cold audience. There was no teaser. We never had a real trailer, actually. All they knew was they were going to go see a movie that had Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd in it. And that's it. They knew nothing else. They didn't even know it's about time travel. So when they're watching the movie for the first time and we're all sitting in the audience, how's the audience going to react? How's the audience going to react? And Einstein goes in that DeLorean and the DeLorean disappears. There's a gasp in the audience. Did something bad happen to that dog? God, they didn't kill that dog, did they? Because that's one thing you never
kill the dog. Never kill the dog.
I mean, that's the worst thing you can do, right? It seems like it's even worse than killing a baby, killing a dog.
Ooh, a baby dog. Oh no,
a puppy. Yeah. Oh my God, that's the whole John Wick series, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're doing this because we killed your puppy? Yes, I'm killing 250 million Russians.
And as an audience, we're like, yes, absolutely.
So there was a sigh of relief when the dog was okay. But the audience didn't get what the movie was until the cafe scene when Marty recognizes his dad. And there was this palpable thing in the audience where you just felt everybody saying, oh my God, this is so cool. This is so great. I get this. I understand where we're going with this. Oh my God. They'd never seen anything like this before. So when you talk to me about, well, what would the Bob Gale experience be?
Yeah.
Well, is this the Bob Gale experience where he's seen advertising for the movie and he goes and he pays his $8 in 1985 or $6, whatever it cost? Knowing that he's going to go see a time travel movie? Or is this the Bob Gale and the sneak preview audience who knew nothing about it? So the sneak preview audience is the absolute cold reaction that to this day is totally unforgettable to me.
Of course.
I was in the audience's head when they were watching the movie. We all were.
Yeah.
Saying, are they going to get this? Are they going to laugh at this? Are they going to understand this? And the last shot of the movie with the car flying away was in black and white because ILM hadn't finished it. Audience, it didn't matter to them. They jumped to their feet. They were going insane.
Wow.
It was because they got it. They were with it, and it worked.
I mean, that is just a beautiful image to kind of wrap this podcast up. And I just so wonderful. And Bob, thank you for, doing this podcast, but also, for making one of the most special things in my life and so many other people's lives. And also thank you for making so many cool little accoutrements to the movie. I mean, above my head right now, I have a hoverboard.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so wonderful and magical.
Well, look, we embrace our fans. We really do. We appreciate you guys. You have no idea how much we appreciate you because it's the fans that are keeping all this alive. And, I like to talk about the original Nintendo 8-bit video game that they made it Back to the Future. One of the absolute worst video games.
I was going to say, is this a public apology for that game?
At the time, I did interviews. I told people not to buy it because it's a piece of crap.
I wish I had seen that interview because one of the first.
I wish I had too. Yeah, it was so bad.
Oh,
it was so bad, and the sequel games were a little bit better, but not much. And it took Telltale to do it right, because those guys were fans of the movie. And there are a bunch of board games that have come out in the last 5 years that have been done by people that really respect the franchise.
Exactly. Yeah.
And because they're fans and they respect the franchise, and their attitude is, hey, we want to get this right. We don't want to screw this up. This is not a money grab for us. We really care. We want to see a Back to the Future board game that correctly captures the spirit of Back to the Future. And they do this, and it's great. There was an author, and this is one that I recommend. I don't know if you have this book or not. It's called William Shakespeare's Back to the Future.
Yes, I did. Yes, somebody gave that to me as a gift. Yeah,
it's just hilarious. And
it really is.
He did William Shakespeare's Star Wars, William Shakespeare's Mean Girls. He did a whole series of these things where he takes the story of the movie and he writes it as if Shakespeare wrote it as a play.
Right.
And these things are hilarious. And so, yeah, he does this because he's a fan of these movies. And he knows that there's an audience of people that want to just, get a big kick out of this stuff. And, we try to have a really good sense of humor about it. Say, okay, you want to have a little fun with Back to the Future? God, yes, go ahead. You see all these great pop culture references. I fell out of my chair in Avengers Endgame when Ant-Man says, "You mean Back to the Future bullshit?" It's great.
And that's one of the things that keeps it so magical to me, and I'm sure so many other people. I always get excited when another little Back to the Future reference is made, or the DeLorean pops up in a video game or something like that. I'm so excited, but it's always been handled with care. Obviously, except for that Nintendo game. And I got to tell you, it was my first experience with being objectively aware of, like, these things that I love can disappoint sometimes, right? I was a kid. I saved up birthday and Christmas money. I went to the video game store with my mom. I was just a little kid, and I got the game, and I was so excited. I brought it home and I popped it in, and there was that moment where I went, oh. This isn't the same thing as the movie, right? So you also gave me an important moment then. You allowed me to grow up a little bit there.
Not only not the movie, it's not even a very good game.
Yeah. I'll go back to Mario.
Exactly.
But the last thing I want to mention is a wonderful cause. It's the We Spark Cancer Support Center.
Yes.
Yeah, they're so wonderful. And it was founded by Wendy Jo Sperber, right?
Who played Linda McFly.
That's right, Marty's sister.
Right. She was kind of one of the members of the Zemeckis Scale repertory company. I Want to Hold Your Hand.
That's right.
It's a wonderful movie. And that's where she met Nancy Allen, her co-star in there. Nancy now runs the We Spark Foundation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
WeSpark.org.
Yes.
It's a great thing to donate to. They help the families and people who have cancer get through it, however that turns out. I'm a big promoter of it. Of course, we've got the Michael J. Fox Parkinson's Foundation. Everybody knows about that,
of
but
course,
I'm very happy that you brought up We Spark, because Wendy died of breast cancer, and before she died, she realized that a support center for the families of people, of cancer victims, was something that didn't exist. Had this vision and made it happen, and it's a very, very successful organization now.
Yeah, and I highly recommend any listeners to head to WeSpark.org. You can find out more there, and definitely throw in a donation. It's a wonderful cause. It's a fantastic foundation. I think it's a beautiful thing.
I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, and finally, Bob, I can't believe I had this conversation. As a guy who grew up with no dad, let me tell you, this has been therapeutic.
You're very welcome. Happy holidays to you.
You too. I'll go ahead and email you my mailing address so you can send me any screen used props that you want to throw my way.
Right. Now that you've taken me on as your surrogate father, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're like a son.
Oh, it's beautiful. I appreciate it.
What you wish for.
Oh, you just made my day. Thank you so much, Bob.
Okay. All right. We'll do this again when Back to the Future, the musical, comes to Broadway.
Yes, I can't wait to see it.
Okay.
All right.
See you in the future.
Don't you like it? I know I do. How about you? What do we off.